Because style, I think, honestly, isn't the paint you use and like the way you draw. Like, it's the way you think. Like, what are the decisions you're making to end up at this design or this thing, you know? George Pratt said it like the best. He's like, the best designers are editors. They just take out, and you're constantly taking away. You're subtracting. You're boiling it down to its base essence. And style really is that, you know?
All right, we are back. It's been a little bit of time since we recorded an episode, but you are indeed listening to the Pencil Kings podcast, and we did not fall off the face of the earth. Today on the line, we've got Dustin D'Arnault. He's a visual development artist at Real Effects, primarily working in movies.
Welcome so much to the call, Dustin. How are you doing tonight?
Hi, Mitch. I'm pretty good, man. Just got back home, had some dinner with the family, and just kind of ready to talk about some art.
Cool. So just to preface this call, we're eventually going to be talking about developing your artistic style and how you can put together a portfolio. But man, it was a little bit difficult to get you on the call. You are a very busy guy. Why don't you start off telling people some of the stuff that you've been working on, whatever you can talk about, that's been keeping you so busy, and sort of like what your day-to-day is like at the studio.
Oh man, yeah, I've had a pretty busy year, thankfully. I guess I can't complain about that at all. Since the movie wrapped, by the way, it's out right now, so please, you can go see it.
Which movie is that?
A Book of Life.
Book of Life.
Yes. Real Effects and Fox. Directed by Jorge Gutierrez. It's a movie about love, romance, death, and everything in between. So please, if you guys have a chance, please go see it. So really proud of this movie. It's got a lot of heart. It comes from a very special place. And I think that everybody who worked on the movie really, really put like their all into it. Really some honest stuff. So very proud of that. Where do I begin? I have a lot of stuff going on. I work full-time at Real Effects, 9 to 6. Lately, since the movie wrapped, we've been doing a lot of development work for like other possible movies for our next feature. There's a bunch of things in the fire, and we're trying to figure all of those things out, as well as like marketing and like, the children's books for the Book of Life, which has been a lot of fun and a real cool privilege to work on. Like, they really turned out great, and I'm pretty proud of them. So I've been doing that, and then at night I freelance for some comic books and just like pitches and stuff like that. And a lot of startup companies want logos and random character designs and stuff like that. So I'm spinning a lot of plates. I'm not gonna lie.
It sounds like you're eating, breathing, and sleeping art from sun up to literally sundown and beyond.
Yeah, I mean, right after this I got to go up and do some more stuff for another client. But yeah. It's hectic, it's hard, but I definitely enjoy it. I mean, it's funny. Starting off at Real Effects, I used to be in the commercial division where I did a lot of, we had to wear all types of hats, and you have to do every single style. Like, anything can happen. It could be super typography based, or it could be photoreal, or it could be pretty much anything a client can throw at you. And so over time, I spent a lot of time doing a lot of stuff I didn't like, and I kind of whittled it down to a lot of the things that I do. And fortunately, I'm doing a lot of that in my day job and at night, where I'm focusing in on like things I'd rather be doing, if that makes sense.
Actually, I've got a question right off the bat here. So when you're starting out, you just got to take whatever you're given and sort of suck it up and realize that this is how you build your chops and you build your experience. And it's actually like a great place to be at, because you get to be exposed to so many different styles, and you start to find what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you like and what you don't like. But how do you start to make that transition to moving towards the things that you actually like to do? Is it easy? Is it as simple as talking to a lead artist or the art director and saying like, hey, in the next project I don't want to be drawing cars anymore, I want to be drawing environments? Or is it something different, completely different altogether?
I think it's a little harder than that sometimes, in my experience. Before I was freelancing and doing all this stuff at night for other companies and just other clients, I spent a lot of time doing my own artwork, because backtrack a little bit, I was doing a lot of commercial work, and it was all across the board. Like, I would look at my portfolio and I was like, there is no distinct vision, or my I guess you want to call it, for lack of a better word, style wasn't in any of this. It was just like a shotgun shell, a shotgun blast of just stuff, which is good, because I got, like you said, I got to learn a lot of different things, what I hated, what I loved. But then at night I would go home and I would like, okay, what do I want to work on? I want to work on character design. I want to be a visual development artist. I really want to become I want to illustrate. So I spent a lot of time doing that on my own time, building that portfolio, honing it, and like doing pieces, like a ton of work all the time, drawing my sketchbook, kind of not showing the stuff that I wasn't liking that I was doing in commercial, and really just tailoring my portfolio. And then when, I think it was around the time Freebirds it came, I, showed the art director, and I had a book full of character design and visual development work. I would go to Fred Gardner, who at the time was an art director on Freebirds, and I would like ask him for an assignment. He would give me an assignment. I'd take it back to my desk, or I'd take it home, and I would do it at home, and I'd bring it in the next day on top of all the other work that I had to do. So it was a lot of just self-discipline, I guess. I've
received quite a few emails asking about portfolio development, especially from students coming out of school. And do you think it's possible for, like, while you're in school to know what you like and don't like and be able to tailor? I know, there's definitely some people that can do this, but I think they more fall into the rock star category where, they're going to make it one way or another. But then there's, they're the like small minority, but then there's the majority of people that, they have a lot of talent, but they're just not sure of their direction. And it just, I've seen portfolios and it's literally all over the place.
Those special few you talk about, those rock stars, the guys you hate, the guys you love to hate, but you really love. Those are the lucky ones. I think for the rest of us, okay, so I would honestly say that if you're in school, you're going to know, most people kind of have an idea of what they like to do. And it really comes down to a matter of taste, kind of. Like, if you like comic books and you have a knack for that, you tend to kind of go into that direction. Like, it's kind of an obvious thing. I fought against it for a very long time when I was in school. And I tried everything, which I'm glad I did. And I picked up a lot of things from each of those experiences. So I would probably tell students when you're in school, especially early on, do it all, man. Make all those mistakes. Make all those ugly paintings. I wanted to be a fine arts painter. I was like, I'm going to be a real painter and do all that. And then, no, man, I'm a cartoonist by heart. And like, that's what I am. And so, I eventually found myself, realizing, well, what am I doing? I need to be doing what I really love. And that's, cartooning and designing. And I kind of followed that path and kind of got to where I am today. I would say do it all when you're in school. You're going to have the rest of your life to kind of decide and kind of focus in. But early on, I think it's really important for artists to really just kind of do it all and kind of try it. Even if you find out you don't like it, I think that's a big thing in deciding what you like to do. Oh, no, that totally makes sense. Just to riff on that for a second, I'm kind of wondering if you were to look back at your sketchbooks from, let's say, the time when you knew that you enjoyed art, but you weren't quite sure if it was going to be a career. You thought it might be interesting. If you went back that far and looked at the artwork that you created then, if it would have any resemblance to what you actually love, kind of with the idea that before you start to get too serious about your art, you just naturally gravitate towards things that are going to come back later, and that might give somebody a clue if they go back into the past and start to dig up some of those old papers, those old sketchbooks, and say like, man, this is really fun when I was doing this kind of work. I wonder if there's something there today. That happens a lot with a lot of people, I think. You kind of stray from the beaten path, right? Like what you initially got you into drawing. And a lot of times you find that people end up returning to some semblance of that, or kind of like at one point they're just like, I miss drawing in, this medium, and then they kind of go back into that route. It happens a lot. I agree with you. I look at a lot of my old sketchbooks and I'm like, man, I see where I came from, and I came a long way. It's very different, but then you can still see my tendencies in my current stuff versus my old stuff. For me, we're always trying to do more and more realistic stuff as 3D artists. And then at some point it's kind of like, man, why, this isn't that much fun anymore. The fun stuff was kind of being weird and cartoony and abstract and, heavy lines. So that got to be a lot more fun. Why don't you tell people a little bit about how you got started, like how you came out of school and landed your first gig? I went to school at Ringling College of Art and Design, graduated in 2008. I attended the Illustration Academy for 2 summers. The Illustration Academy had a major impact in my life. I don't think I'd be working right now if it wasn't for the faculty and for the guys who I went through the school and the program with. I really believe that had a huge impact on like my direction, because I kind of found myself artistically in there. First time I took the academy was the summer from my junior to senior, and I learned a lot. Came through, did my thesis, and then I applied to Real Effects as they came, and they were recruiting at my school at Ringling, and I applied for the apprenticeship program, and then I went to the academy that following summer. So from my end senior summer, I was in the academy again, and luckily I was one of the two artists they picked for the apprenticeship. Aaron McGuire, who's an awesome illustrator and a good friend of mine, she was also picked, and we both went to start at the Real Effects apprenticeship. That's kind of how I got lucky. Brandon Oldenburg and Danny Del Purgatorio, who were two amazing artists and two of my mentors at the time, they believed in me and they gave me a shot, and I really appreciate that.
I just want to clarify here. You took the Illustration Academy twice, but it's a 1-year program?
So it's a summer workshop.
Oh, okay. Like you're friends with Francis, obviously, and that's how we got in touch. And, keep mentioning Ringling and keep mentioning the Illustration Academy. For anybody listening, I think that Ringling is, an extremely expensive school, but it seems like, there's the artists that I've met that have come out have always been, I don't know, I've just been in awe of the skills that they have. But the Illustration Academy, I haven't actually worked with anybody that's come through the Illustration Academy, but it sounds like a fantastic program that anyone's looking for, especially like a summer program where you can just go kind of shut off from the rest of the world and focus on your art, and then come out of it just kind of like at the next level, whatever that is for you.
Oh yeah, man. It's like an artist boot camp. You kind of go in there. I mean, I went in there with Francis and all my buddies. We ate, slept, breathed like art all day long. We sat with these professionals, George Pratt, Sterling Hundley, John English, like Brent Watkinson, like all these awesome guys. And not only were they our mentors, but they became our friends, and they kind of just showed us how they lived their life as an artist. Because to be honest with you, I think the one thing they don't tell you in school is that art isn't really a job. It's kind of a lifestyle choice. Like you're kind of choosing to you're going to live differently than a lot of the other people, than an accountant or a doctor or whatever, which I'm sure a doctor, that's a lifestyle choice in its of itself. But I do think that people in school should understand that if you're going to pursue a career in the commercial arts, I think that it's not just a career, but it is like a lifestyle choice. Like you're being an artist. And the Illustration Academy will help you to realize that, definitely.
And what does that mean to you, the lifestyle choice? I mean, to me, it means a lot of late nights and sort of like a never-ending quest to improve. That from the outside looking in, I don't want to put out any accountants listening to the podcast. I imagine they're in the minority. But it seems like for those professions, they have their sort of like courses that they take once a year to sort of keep up their skills and keep up to date. But with art, it's like, there are courses that you can take, but it's more of just this progression that, I mean, you die striving to be better, and it never ends. There's nobody that says you've made it. Like there's no stamp, there's no check mark or anything for art. It's just ongoing and never ending.
Yeah, I'm friends with a couple of accountants. I don't think you're going to be offending them by that. I mean, that's hard work in itself, but I do agree with you. Like what I mean by lifestyle choices, like I never turn it off. It is always on. Like I'm always doing art. Like even if I'm not doing art, even if I'm relaxing, I'm watching a movie, I'm getting inspired. Like it's always something that's happening in my mind. A lot of other jobs, I guess you could say, they have it easy because, for the lack of a better word, they go into work, they do their 9 to 5. At the end of the day, they walk out and they're done. At the end of the day, if you're an artist, if you're really trying to excel and it requires a lot of self-improvement, you're always on the grind. You're always trying to think of your next piece, because the truth is you're only as good as your latest illustration or your latest comic or character design. I mean that is the latest example of it, and I think that goes for all arts too, not just the visual arts. But every musician, every rapper, every singer is only as good as their latest hit single. Like that's almost how we have to be, and so we don't really get a vacation. Artists go on vacation and they still sketch. I still sketch when I'm, hanging out here, just chilling with you talking. I'm still drawing and doodling on my sketchbook, just because that's actually what you're going to do. So,
what are you doodling right now, Dustin?
I was actually cleaning up a line drawing I did of my friend at work. So I have I have a sketchbook that I carry around. It's like a really small one, about the size of my, phone. And I always just sit during meetings and stuff. And I doodle people and I try to make them really ugly and really offensive or just really, really funny, you know? So I just usually go back and ink them sometimes or whatnot. So
very cool. I love that you're always on task and that you can actually be present in this conversation too while you're doing that.
Oh, well, I'm ruining the drawing as we speak, so I'm going to have to redraw it in a second.
Thought it was a fair gamble. Either I'd find myself or get it out of my system.
You know, at the beginning we mentioned talking specifically about portfolios, and we touched on it in taking the work that you do commercially or for somebody else and sort of putting that aside and seeing what fits in with what you want to do, and then taking your free time to develop that portfolio around the work that you really want to do. This is advice that I give to people all the time, that if you want to, say, design guns, I'm assuming that there is a company out there that would let you design guns. Make a portfolio of kick-ass guns. Don't be drawing characters. I mean, maybe you have your character that holds the guns, but that's it. And the more that you can focus and know what you want to do, the easier that your path is going to be. But how did you approach it, and what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's gone through school, they're looking for a job, or maybe they've been working for 1 or 2 years and they're looking to change careers to something that's more fulfilling with the art that they do?
Good question. So what would I say? So I think you're definitely hitting it on the head where you say, like, make the portfolio of what you want to do, like make it specific. Sometimes it takes a little bit of narrowing down because people tend to, like, you know, be jack of all trades. They're like, I can paint and I can draw and stuff. But I know that in the animation industry, the bigger studios like Disney and DreamWorks and all that stuff, they kind of especially back in the day, they used to look for specialists. Like, you're a character designer, so you have a body of work that shows that you can do all the tasks and all the requirements that a character designer needs to do. You know, can you design model sheets? Can you do the turnarounds? Can you do the posing? You know, you would construct your portfolio based on these needs, and that's essentially how you would get the job. You know, along with luck and, you know, all the stuff that comes with it. I guess to try to, I mean, you gotta be true to yourself. I think that's the first thing, and it's just kind of a funny thing to say for a lot of people. I think you should be honest with yourself. What do you like to do? What are you good at? What are the things that come naturally to you? And you should probably pursue those things and see where that takes you. If you did something that you're like, well, you know, I like to draw characters, but truthfully, there's more, you know, opportunities to work as a background designer or prop designer, but I really want to do characters. You kind of force yourself into this one aspect of it. You're not being true to yourself, at least as an artist. And then and this is going to get complicated because on the flip side of that, a really good friend of mine once told me, he's like, you don't choose the industry kind of chooses you. It almost, like, art directors will come and they'll see something in your portfolio and like, that's what I'm looking for. And then they'll kind of grab you. And all of a sudden you spent a year doing this body of work that, you know, you're like, oh, I never intended to do, I guess, for, you know, prop design or something, but I guess I'm really good at that. And so you kind of snowballs into it. Yeah, it's kind of complicated. I know. I don't know if I answered that question quite right.
I think it's good. It's just, I mean, why I take away from that is with your portfolio, try and tailor it towards the work that you want to do. But that's not necessarily the work that you're going to end up doing, because you never really know how somebody will react to the work that you present. And they might see something that you don't even see yourself, and that from that you get taken off in a different direction. But you're always ultimately able to control your own destiny. So even if you did spend a year doing something that you maybe aren't completely jazzed about, you still do have the opportunity to take that experience, take what you learned doing that, then roll it back into like a new portfolio it's maybe even more focused on what you actually want to do, and then start presenting that to the world and change trajectory or correct course a little bit more towards the thing that you want to do.
Yeah, better said, I guess. That sounds exactly right. Like, and to be honest with you, if you allow yourself to kind of go with, I wouldn't say go with the flow completely, but, you know, you have an idea what you want to do with your life and like what kind of art you want to make, your voice, you know, you pursue that path. And along the way, you're going to be kind of like pushed and pulled. And along the way, you're going to be doing different styles, and you might not be doing stuff that's exactly like what you're doing. But I would encourage people to do that, especially with animation. You tend to kind of like sit there and kind of learn how someone else works. So like when we were on Book of Life, a lot of my stuff in my portfolio is very graphic and bold and stuff. And I like to draw, you know, super jacked guys and, you know, strong guys and stuff like that, and mustaches and all that stuff. And so Jorge's like, I want the guys to design guys and the girls to design girls, and I really want you to, I was almost like, I fit really well, and along the way I kind of learned how to really do his style, and I took stuff from his toolbox and put it into mine, and it kind of goes that way for every production you're on, even the ones you don't like on Freebirds. I don't do anything in that style. Like, I don't like very realistic stuff. I don't care for that. However, I learned some techniques, along the way that I was like, oh, that works, so I'll keep that, and I'll chuck the rest of this. And every time it's almost like you're adding a new pen to your box, and you're like, well, I like this pen, but this one's kind of dry and dead, so I'm gonna throw that one out, but I'm gonna keep these. You kind of learn a new set of ways to kind of do stuff, and that kind of builds on your style almost, or on your personal voice.
I really like that. People often ask, like, how can I create a style? And I've been thinking about this for quite a while and trying to create a framework where somebody could, discover their own style in 30 days or something. Whether or not that's actually realistic, I think you could make a small step, but doing it over the long haul allows you to really get into something that you might not enjoy it at first, but then through the process, you start to realize that, okay, maybe you don't enjoy the whole thing, but there's bits and pieces that are really, really crucial to what you want to do. And if you hadn't have gone through that experience, there's no way you would have picked that up naturally.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like you're still in a certain way, you're almost like still in school. You're kind of learning from a teacher, like your art director or your production designer or your showrunner, like whoever is in charge and kind of setting the tone and the style is kind of teaching you their way of approaching your art. So it's almost like you can almost think of it in a sense, you're apprenticing under this guy and you're like learning, you're like, okay, how do you do this? This is your thinking. Because style, I think, honestly, isn't the paint you use and like the way you draw, it's the way you think. Like, what are the decisions you're making to end up at this design or this thing, George Pratt said it like the best. He's like, the best designers are editors. They just take out and you're constantly taking away, you're subtracting, you're boiling it down to its base essence. And style really is that, people with heavy style and distinct style, all you're doing is you're boiling down stuff, especially for cartooning. You're figuring out the kernel of what makes that character funny or makes that character tick or what have you.
Often I feel that people who ask about style, they're thinking about character design. Mm-hmm. But it's like, choose an artist whose style you like. What does a teapot look like in that style? And it's like, whoa, what do you mean? Now you start to think in more of this holistic way about how this style applies to absolutely everything visual.
When you're trying to do a show, like the first thing I do if I'm learning a new style or a new style guide from a show, I trace the characters. I'm like, what are they doing? I mean, the best way to do it is get to the source, trace it 100 times. You kind of get the shape language and the way they're constructing stuff, and then you kind of learn like, oh, and then you can once you've kind of memorized it and you kind of break it down to like we said, or the base stuff, you can then riff on it and you can like take it your own way and start to put your own voice in there. And you're like, okay, now I'm going to do this kind of character that I saw in the park the other day in this style for Book of Life, and then you kind of make it up, and it works. If you can do that stuff, that's when you're kind of like in the zone and you're just cranking it. But always initially you're going to be learning, and then even afterwards when you come off a show, you're kind of like still drawing in that style, and then all of a sudden you're on a new show that doesn't ask for that style, and you're like, okay, now I got to stop drawing this way and I got to learn this style. Little bits of that stuff will creep into the other one, as long as it's not going off the rails. You'll see some of that knowledge always like back you up every time, no matter what.
I like what you just started, taking a style of something that you like, or taking a character and drawing it, tracing it 100 times, and then starting to deviate and explore different ways. Could you just talk a little bit more about that process? So let's choose a real world example here. So let's say you wanted to draw like Todd McFarlane, and so you pick up a Spawn comic book, and then what? What does that look like? Okay,
so if I wanted to draw like Todd McFarlane, and I think I did at one point in time, so this is hitting close to home, man.
Awesome.
I think almost every dude artist right now is probably like, I wanted to draw for Image and draw Spawn. Be awesome. First thing I would do is get Spawn comics, I would trace them, copy them, look at what he's doing. Then I would research and find out what is he looking at, because most people don't realize that everyone is kind of regurgitating a version of something they looked at, or something they were inspired by and influenced. And while you're inspired by Todd McFarlane, you're like, man, what did Todd McFarlane look at? And I know that he looked at Hogarth. He learned anatomy from that guy, and so then I would go and grab a book on Hogarth and I would start tracing that or start copying that and looking at those references. I wouldn't do that all day for like months on end, but I would do it for maybe the first week or two. And then I would put that stuff aside or pin it up on the board, have it up in front of me so I'm always looking up at it. Then I would just start to play, and I would do my first pass, which will always be more of a pedestrian pass. It'll, for an illustration or for a character designer, for whatever. The first idea you always do isn't necessarily the best one. It's always very straight on, very boring, not pushed enough. But then you kind of, layer another sheet of paper over it, tracing paper, Post-it note, whatever you like to use, light box it, do another version, and kind of constantly push and pull and reference what you're looking at, up there, and even make like a little cheat sheet up in the corner. Like Todd McFarlane does these kind of hands, or he always flares out the cowls and he makes the fingers pointy, and he puts a lot of hatching and elbow point areas, and like little things like that, tendencies they'll tend to do. And then sooner or later, after you've done it for a long enough time, assuming you've been working on Spawn for so long, you'll kind of start to come into your own and kind of really kind of own it, almost like Duncan Frederigo did it on Hellboy. I mean, he started off like doing a version of Mike Mignola, and I think that if you look at the end of that run, like when he got off it, he was doing his own version of Hellboy with the influence of Mike Mignola that's totally Frederigo and totally unique to him. I think a lot of artists who have had to do that, eventually kind of own stuff, and that's really cool to see.
Oh, I love that. Let's just take this example, which I think was fantastic, to a little bit abstract. I was talking to a writer, and he's a ghostwriter. And so he is explaining his process and how he has this, I don't know if he officially called it, but he's like, I have this creepy process where when I have to ghostwrite somebody, I will go and I will read everything that they have written. I will become friends with them on Facebook. I will go through all their posts and read all those things. I will become friends with them on Twitter, or I'll follow them on Twitter, read all that, until he starts to think like that person. And then what the creepy thing is that he will start writing for this person, like writing blog posts or whatever. And the things that he talks about, the actual author will be like, man, that's so creepy that you're writing about this thing, because I was just thinking about that last week. And he's like, of course, because I've been following you, all of your work, and I've been reading your Facebook updates. I'm literally inside your head right now. And I think you can do the same thing, just like what you explained, going through artist work and then also looking back at the history of where that artwork came from.
Totally, man. That's eerily similar, and I think that goes across all professions too, not just art.
Definitely. All right, Dustin, thank you so much for being on the call. What's the best way for people to reach out to you or get in touch or see your work? Or I don't know how much you want to be out in the public, but let us know the best way for that.
Yeah, you can just go to heydusty.com, as well as heydusty.tumblr.com. I have a Twitter. It's DJ D'Arnault. It's just Dustin D'Arnault on Twitter. Sorry, I don't tweet very often. I'm not gonna lie, but I do make a point to try to answer and say hi and be polite and answer back when people tweet me. So feel free to go ahead. And I also have an Instagram. It's DJ D'Arnault on Instagram. So go ahead and follow me, and hopefully I'll follow you back.
Awesome. And we'll have show notes from this episode at pencilkings.com/Dustin D'Arnault. That's DUSTIN-DARNAULT. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back next week on Wednesday with another episode of the Pencil Kings podcast. Thanks so much, Dustin.
Thank you, Mitch. Appreciate it, man. All right, fun.
If you'd like to know more about what we do, head on over to pencilkings.com, where we're offering professional training for artists all over the world at a price that anyone can afford. See you there.
That's what happened.